Hey, well, welcome everybody. This is the Starting Grid podcast. We are here again with another episode number two in our series. And today we wanted to talk a little bit more, just kind of from the perspective of what is Formula One, and give a little dive into where does the sport come from. A lot of us on this podcast and some of the people that are watching are newer to Formula One. And you got to start somewhere. You got to know, what this sport is about and where does it come from. And we want to help, you enter into this sport and get a little bit of a context for this fabulous, fantastic sport that we love and that we have just so much fondness for. So, Barry and Micah, we are here today and just want to talk a little bit about that with you. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. Doing good. Hey, the season's back on. It's today was the first day of testing back on. I mean, not of testing of practice. So it is the first weekend. I know it's I don't know. Like I don't realize how much I miss Formula One until the season rolls back around, and
Yeah,
I'm like, here we go. So I'm good. Micah, how you doing?
I'm giddy. I'm giddy. I woke up. I had a notification that said FP, FP1, FP2. We're in America, so there's a lot of races that we have to watch, and we'll talk about that. A lot of races we have to watch at 5, 6 in the morning. I don't want to do that. So after I wake up, I won't go on social media. I don't want to look at anything, and I want to watch it, on myself. And so I am so
Hey,
excited. Weekend number one, race
here we
number.
go. And you guys are on the West Coast, Pacific time, and I'm
Right.
over on the East Coast. And I just realized today that all of those times where I was having to get up super early, that's not my reality anymore. It's like races are actually yeah, they're at a decent time during the
Reasonable
day. So
time.
that's kind of nice. Well, yeah, like you said, Chad, we want to just kind of do that intro, or like kind of a you're new to Formula One.
Yep.
What is this all about? Why is this so important? And so I think Chad, you had some great points, like just talking through some of the historical overview. What is F1? When did it start? Where did it come from?
So the first race, 1946. Barry did a little bit of deep diving into this. So when you think about old cars, and I don't know if we're going to throw up some historical cars and some imagery,
Hmm.
but just to think back, that was a long time ago. And 1946, the cars were I mean, just crazy. If you're thinking about like driving around, like, I mean, funky tracks. I mean, they weren't made for racing. A lot
No.
of the old tracks were even on like if I remember right, we're on aircraft
Yep.
like
Old
runways,
runways
right?
and yeah.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I remember I watched something on Instagram the other day of Fangio
I
driving
saw
around
that.
one. Yeah, and I was like, oh my goodness, like the steering wheel is like as big as a bus steering wheel. I mean, he's just like driving this
Yep.
thing around doing these skids, and
Yeah.
just craziness. But
The
yeah,
curbs. I noticed the curbs in that because they weren't like little runoff curbs. They were like
no,
just
no,
big concrete blocks on the side. I'm
yep,
like, oh, scary.
yeah. And you Barry, you where was the first race at actually?
So the first official Grand Prix was 1946, like you said, Chad, in Turin, so in Italy. Um, and and interestingly, Italy still has very deep Formula One roots. A couple of races every year that are raced in Italy. But I think when you think Formula One, if you go back to those early days, it's very European sport based in Europe. But Ferrari was, one of the anchor teams, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other personalities and the other teams that or manufacturers rather that were really key in getting Formula One started. But Ferrari, for a lot of people, for most people, when you think Formula One,
Right.
Ferrari is, just really comes to mind because they've got such a rich history. And I'm looking over your shoulder, Chad, looking at that Monaco poster with the open wheel car. And Formula was and continues to be an open wheel racing series. So there's no covers over the tires. The tires are fully exposed. The cars back then were powerful and the cars were light, and the cars today in the same way, extremely powerful, high horsepower, high torque, and very low weight. And so the uh cars go crazy crazy fast.
Yeah, single seaters as well. So I think
Yep.
there's like you got stock. They're not stock cars, right? You got not NASCAR. You got these other series where there is
Mhm.
a car that they're using. Either it's a stock car or there's a car that all the teams are using. That is not Formula One, and that's always been from the beginning. And I think that's what's been so cool is you got a car that they're developing from scratch and building, which is unique.
Yeah.
There's a joke when I try and describe Formula One to people sometimes. I'll explain it like this, and I'll usually use like the origins of Formula One. With NASCAR, because a lot of people, especially in America, that's mainly their understanding of racing. When I say I'm into racing, that's NASCAR. Thankfully, it's growing more to more people are aware of Formula One, but it used to be, they didn't really know what Formula One was. So kind of had to describe
Yeah.
Formula One. And one of the analogies I was used is not analogies, just the history of it. NASCAR was started for people who during I believe during the time where they abolished
Prohibition.
prohibition era, right? And so they're bootleggers and they
Right.
wanted to race their moonshine cars because they're trying to modify their cars to run away from the cops. And so that was the origins
Yeah.
of NASCAR's stock car, right? It looks
Right.
like a normal car, and that's kind of
Yep.
the origins of it. Formula One was kind of the exact opposite. It was a whole bunch of rich people who
Right.
owned cars early on, and they started modifying their cars because I have a better car than you. I'm richer than you. I have this faster car. And for years, it was just guys getting together and racing. And it wasn't until 1946 when they started actually coming together as a sporting entity.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting thing where it's like NASCAR is one thing and Formula One is completely separate. And still to this day, you have some of the most expensive vehicles, racing vehicles to this day. And that is still kind of in the blood of Formula One, which is
Right.
money. And we'll talk about that later as well. But like money plays a very big role in Formula
Yeah.
One.
When I know this, we're gonna scratch the surface a little bit today, but I think we even mentioned in our last episode, um, the history of Formula One is gonna we're gonna talk through that through this whole season. And so even as we do race recaps and our thoughts on our races, we're gonna keep weaving this in because there's just no way to get through all of that in one episode. In fact, Formula One themselves just released a video talking about some of the history, and we'll link to that because it's really well done. And
Super
of
helpful.
course,
Yep.
they know the best about their
Yeah.
own. Now, so the first race was in 1946. Now, if you live in England, you would take issue with that because the first world championship race took place in 1947 at Silverstone, which is still a circuit that's used today as a part of the world championship and is widely regarded as the birthplace of Formula One as we know it now.
Yeah.
And so there were iterations over the years, but if you watch Formula One, if you watch the season, when you get to the Silverstone race, you'll hear the commentators, you'll hear people talking about like this is where it all started. I think it's a bit of a stretch. I think it's taking ownership for something that's really shared. But it is where the world championship started. So
Formula One has these key players
uh,
over the course of history. And so we have major history in certain teams. So when we talk about Formula One, we like today, we're talking about Red Bull, we're talking about Mercedes, but those teams didn't always exist. In the
no,
early years, it was just manufacturers. In fact, it wasn't even sponsors, it was just people building a car, which was really cool to see. Later on, we see these formations of big manufacturer teams, teams like we know as Ferrari, teams like we know McLaren and Williams. And those teams, as you start building this sport, now more people and more people are watching. So you get these sponsors. When talking about Formula One, at least for me, when I think of old classic Formula One, I think of Marlboro, right? Which isn't isn't allowed anymore because you can't advertise tobacco. But those Marlboro cars were red and white and were beautiful, beautiful liveries. Livery being just the way the car looks.
The
Uh,
design, yeah.
and this history of these vehicles over the course of years, as they change, you can change manufacturer, you change sponsor, and the colors changes, and it's really, really cool to see, just like as as um as a family, right? You're growing, and it's really cool to see like how each each team changes and each team maybe gets stronger, or in some cases like Williams, who is a very dominant team, top team, is now not as good anymore.
Right.
And it really stinks because I know I don't remember this, but Barry and you guys may remember the time when Williams was so dominant.
Oh, they were. They were.
And
And they
the thing
were.
that oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Well, the thing that I love about Williams is like it was a privateer, right?
Right.
It was Williams. What's his first name?
Frank. Sir
Frank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He actually started two teams.
Right.
And the guy, was a mechanic and just was a scrapper and he'd pull things out of bins. And I mean,
Yep.
that's what, so yeah, a lot of us don't think of, I mean, Williams, even in his testing this year, they're not looking so hot again. And some people are just like, yeah, they're on the bottom of the grid, but yeah, they have championships. They have just a pedigree. They've been around forever. And I just love that like privateer spirit of like, we're going to get this done. We don't have the backing of a big old, Mercedes or some other manufacturer. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, and then you have teams like Mercedes that, like you said, Micah, it's these big manufacturers that get in. Alfa Romeo is another one that's been from the start. They've been a part of, and I think a lot of people, because Alfa is not a brand that's as widely known even in the U.S. But you go to Europe, you go to the rest of the world, and Alfa is synonymous with racing. And so, even though their cars right now seem a little more mediocre, and there's a lot of, one of the things we haven't brought up is the fact that there's 10 teams, there's 2 drivers on each team. Right. But in those 10 teams, not all of those are their own manufacturer. So Red Bull Racing they make energy drinks. They don't make engines. Right. So right now they're under contract with Honda to build their engine for their power unit.
For now, because they're building their own ability to build their own. They're trying to get away from Honda.
Well, but they just signed with none other than
Ford, right? So
and Ford. It's funny as when that announcement came out and people were like, "Oh, Ford." Ford has a long history in Formula One. Has won multiple championships. The Cosworth engine,
yep, one of the best.
Phenomenal. And that's where the story is really complicated, because now it seems like there's these real clear lines between teams, manufacturers, sponsors. But back then, in the Frank Williams days, the Bruce McLaren days, they were garage mechanics tinkering. Right. So you had like the Ferrari powerhouse,
right?
With all of the money and all of the prestige and all the glamour, and then you had Bruce McLaren and Frank Williams in their garages tinkering. And there's great shots. We'll throw some of the pictures up. I mean, it's just a bunch of guys in a garage wrenching on a car, trying to squeeze every little bit of horsepower out of it. And it was messy, but it was also, I think this is the thing that people don't realize about Formula One, and it's been this way for a long time, is a lot of innovation that makes it into our everyday cars starts in Formula One. It really has become kind of that test bed. So like hybrid, right? Having a hybrid power unit, that was tested in Formula One. That's where like kind of all the kinks were worked out of it. And so it's this really high level of technology that it's become for manufacturers and very prestigious. But man, that's not where it started. And that's not even that long ago. I mean, we're talking about like the 60s and 70s, even into the early 80s, that Formula One was still kind of gritty. It was yeah.
So
so
why the name Formula One? I don't know if you guys have ever thought about this, but Formula One is because of the rule book the standard is a formula. So the Formula One is the standard that they follow. Sorry, not the rule book. The rule book's separate. The Formula One is the standard for the cars, and
The
so
tech
each
specs, yeah.
the specs for the car. So the governing body, the FIA, gives this formula to teams and says, hey, you can build a car within these parameters. And every year there's little baby tweaks. And throughout the course of history, there's been major tweaks. And so you have different eras of Formula One. Maybe you'll hear that often, different eras of Formula One, because there will be huge sweeping changes to the rule books, to the ways that manufacturers can build the cars. Manufacturers, just as Barry said, can come up with different ideas and different ways to integrate, whether that be six-wheel cars. Yes, that existed. Like six-wheel cars, four little baby wheels. Yeah, you see right
You
there.
can show one of those
And
on
our
here.
goal is
Oh,
for
I
the
believe
Tyrrell.
it was a big one.
We're
And so
gonna
you
have
have
the
these
Tyrrell come up
manufacturers.
every episode.
Right. And you have these manufacturers coming out with some of these most insane things, and maybe they'll stick, and sometimes they don't. And usually
Right.
they don't. And so what teams can do is they can be like, you know what, I don't like that. And they will petition to Formula One, to the FIA, and say, hey, I don't think what they're doing is within the rules.
Right.
But what's really cool and interesting about the rules is that they're interpretive. So you can read it and be like, I'm interpreting the rule book to be this way. And so I'm going to come out with this specific thing. I was just watching 2019 season, or sorry, 2020 season, and Mercedes-Benz introduced the DOS system. And the system where you push the steering wheel forward and pull the steering wheel back, and it changed the camber of the tires. And the next season, it was banned.
Yeah.
And so that's what's so cool about Formula One, is that it's always changing and adapting as you watch the season. This 2022 season was a minor change because there was a big sweeping change last year. This season, there were only minor changes that were introduced. One of the biggest eras of Formula One, at least in the last 10, 20 years, was the hybrid era, where cars went from V8 engines to V6 hybrid engines. V6s are all around. We have V6s in most cars today, either a 4-cylinder or V6, and a lot have hybrids. So wait, do we have it just from a Camry? No, these are performance engines.
Yeah, no, they are.
Hybrid system is not there to increase efficiency or miles per gallon. It's there to increase performance.
Okay, so here's a good question. And if you're listening or watching, you can respond to this. This is kind of our poll for the week. If you are a long-term Formula One fan, best sounding engine in the history of Formula One. Which series of engines sounded the best? Chad, any thoughts?
I'm gonna say the V10s probably.
Yeah.
Or if you, I don't know if we can get even a sound bite.
Yeah, no, we'll
here,
throw it in. We'll throw it in right here.
V10s. I mean, I look back. I'm sure as you guys do, and just listen and yeah, just roaring loud, just incredible. That's probably my favorite. Plus the era itself was just crazy. So you had just like craziness happening plus the sound. But
I'm with you. I'm right there. I'll be interested to see what the responses are, if we get any responses. But I'm with you. I think the V10 era they screamed. Those cars just screamed down the straight, and that's I'd love to hear one of those cars in person.
I think the V8.
Micah, what do you like V8?
I think so. The V6, and man, the eras right now, like it's the enjoyment for me. Like the cars are cool today, but I enjoy the V8s. I enjoy the throaty sound. I enjoy just that screaming to the limit type of engine. And man, it's so hard because I love Formula One's push into renewables. I love Formula One's push into more sustainable fuels, introducing more electricity and introducing more alternative modes of power. But you also don't get these incredible sounding vehicles. I don't know if you guys ever listened to Formula E, but it's like driving an RC car. Like it's cool racing, incredible drivers, but it's not the same
Right.
at all
Right.
to Formula One
Yeah,
with engines.
I like the renewables. I like the whole. I mean, like just in terms of our environment, but like I'm also like this is a racing sport,
Right,
and I just don't know how. I mean, yeah, you can get renewable fuels and things, but like
right.
if Formula One tried to go all electric and just adopt that, I mean, it would.
I don't know. I
No,
don't
No,
think so.
it would. Yeah, I mean, and I imagine 25 years from now, maybe more, we'll get to a point where all fossil fuels are completely outlawed, and it'll Formula One will be a thing of the past. I don't anticipate that in my lifetime. I hope,
but
because
I mean,
I
they
just
might be able to
enjoy
find renewables, right? Like
yeah.
another fuel
Right.
source that
Just
still use
alternative
an
fuels.
internal combustion engine,
Yeah.
but it's
We'll
renewable.
see. We'll see. I think that but I do think as long as we are using renewable fuel sources, that we will see
Right.
this league,
I think
this
so.
racing series in one form
Thanks.
or another. But I think if anything at this point, Formula One is gaining popularity. It's not
Right.
declining.
For sure.
And
For
you
sure.
know, and a lot has been made about Drive to Survive and how that's impacted the sport. But I think it's more than that. I think you know, I think Drive to Survive, and you know, you guys, we were chatting about this week about this last week, is that, you know, Drive to Survive kind of paints a real great picture of the kind of some of the drama and the people
Right.
behind the story, but it doesn't, you really don't even get a full sense of the sport. And again, that's
Right.
kind of why we want to do what we're doing, right? Is to talk through some of the particulars and how, you know, and I think we're running out of time for today, but like in a future episode talking about like the point structure, the world
Right.
championship, or you know, the manufacturer's title versus the
Right.
driver's championship, and why they have those two things, and then of course we're gonna get into the money of it, and that's a few episodes right there that we could talk about the money around Formula One.
As
But
you can see, Formula One has deep history, right? It's been around for over 70 years. And I hope this gives you like a sense of just the depth. And of
yeah,
course, 30 minutes isn't going to be able to describe the entire history of Formula One, but maybe this is just an intro for you, just a taste of what Formula One is and the deep rooted history that it is, and why when people talk about it, there's not just passion, but there's also a sense of belonging to something that's been around for so long. You'll see often, if you watch any current races, that there will be drivers from that era, from older eras, that will be guests of certain teams. And Formula One, what we try to do, at least for those that are a part of the community, is to honor those that have been before, those like Senna, Schumacher, those that have come before us, Niki Lauda, right? That have incredible deep roots history and made Formula One what it is today.
yeah, that's good.
So good. Well, we got first race of the season this weekend. Any predictions before we end today from you guys?
It's Yeah, I think, and if you've watched testing, and we were just talking about before we started recording, is Alonso is looking strong. It's looking good.
Yeah.
I don't think, you know, I don't know. I think we're not going to see the top three teams just outrunning everyone like they have in the past.
Right.
I think we're going to see I think McLaren, I think Aston Martin, I think they're going to be a little bit more competitive and give Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull a run for their money. I think at the end of the day, I think we're still going to see Verstappen just
Right.
dominate. But yeah, no clear prediction, but
Yeah.
it's going to be
Yeah.
fun.
Mike, you
So
got anything?
in order to not jinx myself, and this is where I mean I'm wearing Red Bull, but I love the race in general. In order to not jinx myself, so there is a Bahrain curse. A little bit of superstition. Superstition is all around Formula One, by the way.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of Formula One Bahrain curse, where the winner of Bahrain for the last 5 years did not win the championship.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay.
Leclerc won last year,
Uh,
didn't win the championship. Year
Interesting.
before, and so there's things where it's like, oh, I want Max to win, but I kind of don't.
So the
Because I
goal,
do
the
think I
goal is
do want him to take the
well,
third.
come in second.
Right. Come in second. However, I think I'm gonna do Sergio Perez win. I'm gonna do an Alonso within the top five, and then I want Nico Hulkenberg to score points on his first outing as Haas.
Okay.
All right.
That's
All
my
right.
three.
I want to see Aston get a podium. I don't know if they're going to, but I think, I mean, this what we've been seeing in testing. I think they might have been sandbagging a little bit last week with testing. Maybe they weren't. I don't know. Maybe they're just running a low fuel today. But so I'd love to see them get up there. And then yeah, I don't know that I have a prediction for the race winners first and second, but ultimately, yeah, I just want to see some action.
Yeah.
And I think you got enough of these, like, some of these rookies coming in, Nico obviously coming back in. I think there's going to be maybe some jockeying, maybe some
Yeah.
crashes. I don't know, some just knocking off the rust and things. So I think it could be an exciting weekend to see some fun things happen. So
Yeah. Okay. I have one more prediction. I have
Yes.
this prediction. My prediction is that Nick DeFries crashes out because he's aggressive.
Yeah.
I think he's got a lot to learn, but he's
Yeah.
pretty cocky, but he's super aggressive, and I think he's going to have a steep learning curve. That's my prediction for the
Crash
first
out.
weekend.
It'll
I
be
think
interesting to
Logan
see
would
how
crash out for Nick DeVries, but
oh, Logan, he better do good representing the U.S.
Come
I'm
on.
interested to see how Lance's hands do too. For those of you
yeah,
who know, he had an accident right before testing and had a break, I think, in one of the hands, and is back in. But I don't know how he's going to last. So we could have maybe somebody fill in if he can't make it through testing or qualifying and all that stuff. So anyhow, awesome, exciting, guys.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for joining us today. We're just, as you can tell, we're excited about Formula One. We're excited about you joining us in this journey. You're so welcome here at any time we share. We'd love you to have put some comments in the comment section if you have any questions, any feedback of what you're hearing, or just talking about some of the things that we're talking about. We'd love to hear from you as well, and just enjoy being with you guys today and talking about Formula One.